Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Fellowship in Essential Oils. This week we're looking at cardamom, Liz.
We are. Do you know, I would say this is one of my favourite oils, but then when I went in the shed, I couldn't find my bottle. So I've had to go into my stepdad's box to get his old. It's empty, but I can still smell cardamom, and it's about 30 years old, this bottle. So that's really
Wow.
nice. Yeah. And it's an oil I use a lot. So I'm looking forward to talking about this because people don't talk about it very much, do they?
No, it's another one of those unsung heroes, but it's got a very prominent aroma about it. I find if you do use it in a blend or anything like that, you only need a tiny amount to get a really powerful aromatic effect of it, don't you?
Yeah, and then what I'm thinking, that's not what I was expecting you to start with. I thought you might say you can smell it a lot in the Middle East. Do you not?
Not so much. Yeah, being in the Middle East, it is kind of one of those, stereotypical ones, and it is used in a few different dishes and that type of thing. But yeah, um, I think when you taste it or smell it, it kind of you could it's definitely there. It's not a one who sits in the background. It's not a
Oh
subtle
yeah,
one, is
yeah.
it?
It's distinctive, isn't it? Like you straight away. Well, actually, usually if you taste it and you go, "What is that taste?" It's not one that you've got both. Like even me, who uses it a lot, it's not in the database very much. Of I know what that taste is. But what is it? What is it? And it takes you a while to work out what it is, doesn't it?
No, I totally agree. But I am fascinated at the fact that you use it a lot. As I said, it's in my collection. I pull it out from time to time, and I'll probably kind of get a bit more excited when we get into the emotional aspect because I think it really works well with one aspect of that. But how are you using it physically?
Lots of different ways. So, first of all, if you consider that about 40% of its constituents is 1/8 cineol, so straight
Hmm.
away that takes you into the respiratory stuff. Um, Emotionally, jumping the gun a lot, but the reason why I use it a lot is it's very good. I'll tell the story, like the myth of cardamom in a bit, but it's very good for saying stop now. You know, if you're like really stressing about all the things that you've got to do, and you're like, or if
Mm.
you're like me and you kind of think like you're failing a bit sometimes,
Yeah.
then it's very good at putting you back on track. Also, and the light is not flattering to me because I look so white today, but I have got really pale skin, and it's very reactive to the sun. So right from when I was about 20 and I went to Egypt, my mum always put in cardamom into skincare to protect my skin. It's very good for sort of calming down redness and like calming down sunburn and stuff like that. And also from the most like traditional way of using spices, digestive. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. I must admit, when I look at the physical uses of it, I kind of think of cardamom gets things flowing. So,
Yep.
if there's any respiratory issues, it gets it flowing again. If there's any digestive issues, it gets it flowing again. And because it's a bit of a warming essential oil as well, really great when it comes to circulation. So if you've got cold extremities, using it in massage blends can be really powerful in that way as well.
Yeah, and I think of all the digestive traits that it has, you know, sometimes you like use things for diarrhea or constipation, and you could use it for all of those things, but its mastery is with flatulation. You know, that feeling of,
Mm.
you know, you feel like, oh God, I really feel bloated and I feel uncomfortable. It really settles that down. It's really lovely oil to use in abdominal massage.
Yeah. So you'd obviously use it a lot when you're talking about it. And I know you use oils mainly in massage anyway, but this is one that's going into a lot of blends. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's not an oil I ever used on its own, really, to be honest. Likewise, it's not an oil that I put in the bath because although it does have grass status, generally got regarded as safe grass, I
Mm.
think it is a bit of a dermal irritant. And also, again, we would always say it's a lovely, safe and benevolent and gentle oil. All of those things are true, but I wouldn't use it on children either because of that high level of 1/8 cineol. And when we're kind of talking about like warnings over 1/8 cineol, we immediately go there in eucalyptus. But myself, I never even think of saying, and don't use cardamom, but like from a theoretical standpoint, it's not a good plan. But it's energetically, it's quite an adult oil, I think, anyway. So when I like teach about cardamom, I always say it's a bit like the Middle East. It's like going to, if you go on holiday and you do all the tours, and the different events, and you go on a Bedouin feast, and you're sitting under the stars, and you've got the tent, and you've got beautiful warm coffee, and you've had spicy oil meal, and your coffee would smell of cardamom probably, and it's that feeling of looking and going, look how far I've come. And I think for somebody like me who does get a little bit of a failure complex sometimes, or gets, because I'm quite perfectionist over things, I can get really bogged down by the minutiae, and which is why I use cardamom, because it goes, stop, look how far you've come. And I think that's a really helpful medicine for people who suffer from work stress, or looking after people like who are working as a carer. The other thing that I used it a lot for earlier this year was in the summer, where everybody was like posting they were going on holiday, and I hadn't booked a holiday, and I was like, because it brings that kind of sense of exotic with it, you've got to, it brings in that warmth and sparkle. And so if life's feeling mundane, which is, it's a menopausal thing, I have to say, ask any menopausal woman, she'll say, I've had enough, everything feels mundane. Cardamom is really lovely for that. So while it's not like a hormonal oil, it is aphrodisiac, but it's not hormonal. It's good from that psychological point of just like, oh, feeling a bit, well, that's a bit more interesting. Yeah.
And I think that's the one point that you mentioned there about people feeling that they're not achieving everything. We do live in a world often where it is all about, we often hear, and probably if you're looking at any kind of new age or inspirational conversation, a word that you use a lot is a journey, which really kind of talks to this idea of, like there's a destination and somewhere you need to get. And I read an amazing quote, and I need to commit it to memory, but this author was saying that instead of thinking of life as a journey, think of it as a masterpiece, as a painting that needs to be filled with different colors and lights and shades and darkness. And you're just trying to add as much color to your life rather than actually to get to anywhere. And I think when we're talking about that exoticness of cardamom, it's very much to kind of let's add a little bit into that, a bit more color into life as well. I think on that emotional level, it could be really quite supportive for people that are feeling a bit stuck. And when we're talking about, again, physically, the oil gets things moving. If we're feeling stuck in life, it could be a good oil to reach for as well.
Yeah, and so in bee shamanism, we have a practice that you do in the morning, like the bee does, called sun sipping, and we also do fire sipping. And it's this idea of bringing heat into, and like perhaps Ayurveda would say, fueling the fire of Anyi, and I do think it's got that quality of being able to say, right, tinder spark, we everything's a bit flat, everything's a bit damp and rubbish and whatever, and it lights the fire again.
I want to kind of elaborate on that tinder spark idea. And I don't know actually in this series whether I've actually kind of gone through the core premise of the book that I wrote with Vanessa Jean, our Gifts of Essential Oils, shameless self-promotion. But we divide the oils into the 5 different elements based on where the oil is gifted from on the plant. So in short, anything that comes from wood, root, or bark is to do with the element of earth, very grounding. Flowers are to do with water, the emotions of love. Leaves are to do with air and the thoughts. Fruits are to do with fire. And then the remaining oils come either from the resins or the seeds. And we associate that with akasha or spirit or ether. Now, whereas we can see the other 4 elements kind of in action, akasha is a little bit trickier to explain. It's very much to do with, we know that we have something within us that observes our thoughts and our feelings. We know that, what makes a seed know to germinate, to send out a root and reach and burst out of the earth. There's something, a life spark in there. And so the resins help us connect with that life spark because the resins are deep within the trees. So they help us connect with what's deep within us. And we've talked about that with frankincense. And as we explore other oils like copaiba or myrrh, we'll look at that a bit more as well. But the seeds, when we think about a seed, what is a seed? It's potentiality. So each of the seeds, whether it be coriander, whether it be cumin, whether it be dill, whether it be celery seed, they all help to awaken something that's potential within us. For me, what we've been talking about with this Tinder Spark idea is I think that cardamom awakens passion. And I actually use it. I'm working on a new project for next year to do with managing different emotions. And I find that when it comes to anger, cardamom can be really helpful. Because if we think about anger and passion, they're very similar emotions. They're both very fiery. So what's the difference between the two? Well, anger doesn't have an outlet. There's that fire inside and I don't know what to do. Whereas passion is that fire is flowing and it gets it kind of, off and rolling. And we know how we have an outlet, a creative outlet for our passion. So just as cardamom is really great for working with getting things moving in the lungs, getting things moving in the digestive system, especially when we're holding something in like a fart, it's really good for the circulation. I find cardamom's a really good one for helping us when we're angry. We can use things like eucalyptus for helping to soothe the anger, manuka for helping us get rid of that revenge mentality, but then cardamom actually helps us take that fire instead of dampening it out, sparking that and finding a constructive way to use that fire within us in something that's going to be productive and proactive rather than destructive to ourselves and other people as well. So I really, really love it for that.
I love that. And I was reading some old notes that I'd written because I wasn't really able to recall huge amounts of information today for this. And one of the things I'd written was that the key word actually in the Tongue of the Trees cards we use is contentment. And in terms of the aphrodisiac, it's almost like if you can't be with the one you love the one you're with. This idea of I'm happy with this. This will do for me. And I think that all of these things. Sometimes we live in a society where it's all about striving and making things better and moving forward, or ripping things apart and dissolving that and whatever. There's very little medicine about just sit and be, just stop, and that is cardamom medicine. Just stop.
Yeah. So I think really nice one for helping us to get back into the flow of things and be okay with the natural flow of things rather than forcing things as well.
Yeah, and I've looked in my book because, like I said, so one of the things I put down here is urine retention. Absolutely right about what you said about flow. So that's good. The other thing that I haven't put down is sciatica. So let's talk about that. And the reason for that is, of course, we talk about 1,8-cineol as a point of view of being a respiratory medicine, and it's fantastic. It's antimicrobial, but it's also decongestant, all of those things. But one thing we always forget about this particular constituent is how good it is as an antinociceptive. So if somebody has elevated nerve pain and the nerve pain has been ramped up, 1,8-cineol is a really good way to calm that down. And it works in the same way as the opioid receptors that things like morphine use. So it's a really powerful system. So we could use it for things like rheumatism, arthritis, those things that need warmth, but also nerve pain and aches and pains that come from, ramped up nervous tension, but also nervous signaling too. Yeah.
One other thing, kind of what you reminded me of as you're talking then is, we've kind of danced around the idea that it's an aphrodisiac oil and it can be used for that. I think it's quite useful for working it with people. I've noticed a difference being of pagan or Wiccan background. My relationship with sexuality is very different to what I find often with other religions. And I sometimes notice people going, when there's any kind of sexual or flirty talk, don't be naughty. And there's almost that kind of that overlay of not celebrating that aspect of life. And I think cardamom can really help people to also feel comfortable with their sexuality. Just like we can't hold farts in, we can't hold our other impulses in as well. Because what happens if you hold them in? It just all goes weird. Something's going to come out wrong.
My dad would be
It's going to turn out
appalled that you've used that word twice now in the video. He'd be appalled if you could hear this behaviour. But you're quite right. And I think that, yeah, I mean, it's kind of almost like a tantric thing, isn't it? And now you said that, I wish that I would have thought of having a look in the perfumed garden. I might do that for the masterclass, actually. I don't know if you know what it is. It's not quite the Kama Sutra, but it's an Indian sacred text about scent and sensuality and the scented plants in the perfumed garden. I bet there's lots about cardamom in there. Yeah, I might have a look.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So in short, whether if you're going to hold in, if you're holding in a fart, if you're holding in your sexuality, either way, in the end, it's going to turn to shit.
Oh my God.
As this conversation is as well. So let's move it on. Chakras. Let's talk about chakras. Where would you place cardamom as a chakra oil?
Did you know what? I lay awake thinking about this. I really do need to sneeze. Sorry, ads. That's why I'm messing up.
That's okay.
It's coming. Oh, finally. Sorry, everybody.
There we go. A collective bless you.
Yeah, thank you. There's that movement of energy. I would go sacral chakra. Because why? Because there's another sneeze. Because yes, the sensuality, but the sacral, well, let's talk about the root chakra, is always about what I need to be safe, what I need to survive. But as the energy moves up from the root up to the sacral chakra, it's about what I want. You know, and that's a very different energy, and I think, you know, that moment of sitting under the stars, look how far I've come. You kind of have that sensation of, oh, this is what I want, or this isn't what I want, or I want more of this, you know, and suddenly it opens that channel in you that perhaps doesn't exist in everyday life because there's no space for it. You know, I don't care what you want, you've got to do the washing up. I don't care what you want, you've got to be at work in an hour, you know, but you won't be sitting in that environment. Suddenly that channel opens. And yeah, so I think I'd go sacral chakra. What's your thought?
Yeah. Well done. I'm normally pretty much a stickler for my chakras, and I'm like, nope, this is the one I believe. And I think my default for it is the base chakra. For that empowerment, but I'm really starting to lean to, I can see how it would work with the sacral chakra as well after this conversation of getting in touch with our sensuality, our passions, allowing things to flow, bringing pleasure into our lives. I think that's all very sacral chakra. So I think definitely it's a lower chakra oil.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything about this oil that says protect me, defend me, do any of those things that you know, that most of our oils do, because of course that's what the plant's doing. But this is more about just like, well, I'm just going to sit here and be. Very, very big thing to say.
Yeah, very content. Yeah. So then planetary wise, where would you place cardamom?
Do you know, I never came up with an answer to this. This is what kept me awake. Thank you very much, Adam.
Right.
I don't know, because this is my conundrum, right?
Yeah.
Everything about it is fiery. It's got a fiery fragrance, it's got a fiery energy, but fire says drive. So it kind of feels like Mars, but like the antithesis of Mars. So I'm going to go Venus, which should normally be like a say heart chakra, but I've done myself out of that. But in, you know, so people wouldn't perhaps know this. So in astrology, what you tend to have is a push me, pull you across the universe, between signs, between planets. Well, Venus tempers Mars. So when Mars is out of control, Venus goes, wait a minute, and pulls it back. And I think if from my philosophy of it being good for that drive, you know, people who don't know when to stop, I think Venus. So that's where I'm going to go.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to partly agree with you that I would place it with Mars for sure. But I think sometimes we kind of go, well, you know, Mars has to always be about more fire, more drive, more motivation, that type of thing. But I think what we're obviously trying to do as we get to know our own personal astrologies, we're trying to find harmony and a healthy relationship with each of those planets. So how do we use our Mars energy in a a healthy, balanced, harmonious way, rather than just always being driven. And so I would actually use it with Mars for helping us to connect with our passions, especially around, Mars retrograde. It only happens, it doesn't happen every year. We get about every 18 months. And that's normally when what happens is our motivation drops dramatically. We're just like, I can't be bothered doing anything, because Mars is not around to kind of be your life coach or your sports coach going, get up in the morning, let's do that type of thing. And so I often get people to ponder around this time, well, if Mars isn't motivating you to do it and you're not motivated to do it, then why are you doing it? And it's a really great time to kind of clean out the things that we're not passionate about and work with oils like cardamom to go, what am I actually driven, and what does get the juices flowing? What gets me excited? And maybe I can now start making some changes in my life to pursue my passions rather than pursuing my obligations. And so I pair it with Mars. I also pair it a little bit with Eris, which is his sister, which is in the running to be the 10th planet. She's a much smaller planet out near Pluto, bigger or heavier, but smaller than Pluto. But she's very much about shaking things up a little bit. So I think cardamom has that ability to get things flowing again, but not in a totally destructive way like we may be talking about oregano a couple of episodes ago, but more so the kind of let's just get it a healthy flow of fire and passion and chi and whatever other energies we want coursing through our veins again when they are stuck. So going back from that, what the oil does physically, it's going to do metaphysically, holistically, astrologically. So that's kind of my 2 bobs worth on the astrology of it.
You talked for too long then, because what I was going to do before, you just like took away my moment. So I'm going to go back to before.
Go back to your moment. Rewind.
to before you started talking about Eris, what you were talking about was, what if you're not motivated by Mars, you're not motivated by yourself, what you're doing it for?
Yeah.
I would have loved to have come in then and said, this is what you want to do, which is exactly what I'd said earlier. So you were arguing exactly the same point. So I think that's very good. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've gone down different paths, but we've landed in the same destination.
Yeah. Yes. I'll edit you.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Awesome. So that's a little bit about cardamom, an amazing oil. I think, hopefully we've awoken the passion of cardamom in a few people, because like many, they've got it in their collection, but they're just not using it enough. But working it into their lives to find that contentment with life, I think is something we all need at some point in time, don't we?
Yep. I love it.
Yep.
Can't recommend it highly enough to you.
Yep. And we're going to go a little bit deeper. I'm really interested. Was it the book called The Fragrant Garden? What's this?
Perfumed Garden.
The Perfumed Garden. I need to get my hands on this. I haven't seen it.
It's a rude book. Yes.
Okay.
But beautiful, really beautiful. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, while I'm in the Middle East, I've been sending all my mail to my mother, so I might order that book, and she can open that and wonder what on earth
so thrilled
now. Exactly.
She won't answer the phone.
No. Oh dear. Just go on the pile with all the other things I've been mailing there as well. So we've got our masterclass. We've actually shifted the date a little bit. We wanted to get but we're squeezing it in before Christmas. We're going to be theming it around immunity as the Northern Hemisphere gets into winter, around the holiday season, and we're also going to look at the solstices from both North and the Southern perspective as well. So we're going to be looking at, can I remember what we're talking about? Rose, oregano,
yeah,
cardamom,
myrrh, and then we've
and
added timing because we're going a week later. Yeah, so apologies for the movement, people, of the date. Yeah,
so if you've already bought a ticket, we'll let you know about that. But I'm guessing that you might be listening to this and you haven't bought your ticket yet. So get your cardamom out, get things flowing, and don't forget that whether you're listening to the podcast or watching the vodcast on YouTube, we've got a discount code in the comment section. So while you're sitting there asking us any questions or making any comments, make sure you check out that discount code of fellowship and you're going to get 20% off your ticket. The masterclass is great because you get to ask questions about what we've talked about, add in your 2 bobs worth. Plus, you can take us on any essential oil tangent you want to as well. So we're going to have lots of fun in the masterclass. I think I'm going to do a little thing on the throat chakra that I referred back to in oregano as well. So thank you so much for joining us here again on the Fellowship with Essential Oils. We'll see you next week when we're going to dive into a very interesting oil that another unsung hero, kind of plays in the shadow of frankincense. We're going to dive into myrrh. We'll see you next week.
That's what I'm writing about at the moment, so I've got some really good stories.
You better be here next week. We'll see you then. Take care. Until then.
Bye-bye.